and we'll bounce around a little bit. Okay, so heading east, Maspeth, Queens. Grand Avenue is where the last coach is. I'm standing on a overpass, a pedestrian overpass. You can see the New York Connecting Railroad in the background, some of the Long Island City skyline and some Manhattan skyline in the background. A good place to take pictures. Heading east, Jamaica, always nice to visit. New York and Atlantic Freight. This is a westbound RS-41 coming back from working on the Central Branch. New York and Atlantic was formed in 1997 to run freight on the Long Island. Nice GP38-2 that used to run on the Long Island or for the Long Island. Heading east, this has been a subject of interest for me over the last couple of years. This is the Long Island Railroad's expansion project, which adds 9.8 miles of a third track, or will add 9.8 miles of a third track on the main line between Floral Park and Hicksville, scheduled to be completed in about a year. They've made a lot of progress. This is New Hyde Park with some temporary platforms as the new ones were being built just east of this view. This is not a shuttle train, this is an equipment move. Here you can see the permanent platforms being built and the third track sort of coming into view. I haven't been here recently, but I imagine this is quite a bit further along. Some snowy views in the winter of 2021, I should say. Heading east, Maryland Avenue, little graphic showing you kind of what they're doing. This was a place I came back to a few times. This was taken March 7th, 2020, where Nassau Boulevard goes under the tracks. I came back December 26, 2020. You can see the elevators going in. And I went back last week, and that's where we are today. Quite a bit of progress. Here is the actual south platform elevator area. Again, March 7th, 2020, December 26th, 2020, and last week. And a view on the platform at Maryland as the new platform is being built. And that's kind of what it looks like today. Nice stained glass, nice open and good lighting. Heading east, Mineola, view from July of 2021 with New York and Atlantic RS-41 passing the third track construction. You can see the construction equipment where the third track would be. And that's what you would see in Mineola in 1972, a C-420 passing the station building. The famous Nassau Tower, unfortunately, met its demise in September. Built in 1923, it closed as a tower on July 11, 2020, with functions moving to the Jamaica Central Control. As I said, the tower was demolished last month. The neighboring substation, which you can see in this picture, was demolished a few months before that. The gloomy view of RS-41 heading west sort of sets the tone for the loss of the tower. Here's a picture I took winter last year. You can see the tower and the substation. And here's a shot taken last week. No more tower. If you like poles and wire, this is certainly a place to go. Here's a couple of views around the area. An M7 crossing Main Street. That crossing has been closed also. If you look at the tracks there, you'd never know there was a crossing. The substation in this view had just been knocked down. Another view here of an Oyster Bay train heading west, passing the tower. Again, substation just knocked down. And there's that famous RS-41, which we always seem to find in the afternoon, heading west. Back on ground level, lots of work trains can be found on weekends, supporting the third track and other projects. A couple of MP15s, another couple of MP15s, and that famous RS-41. Heading further east, Bethpage, the old station building there. High-level platforms are behind me. This is a weekend shuttle from Babylon that runs across the Central Branch when the main line is closed for third track construction. Great opportunity for rail fans to photograph well-lit locomotives on the west end of trains. A little further east, that's the famous B Tower. This is where the central branch diverges from the main line. This is eastbound RS40 with GP 38-2261, heading on the track next to me to head down on the central branch. We'll continue further east on the main line. Here's a weekend RS70 passing Central Islip, headed out toward Riverhead. The famous connection at Ronkonkoma, where the electric trains give you a transfer to the Scoot. And the view at Ronkonkoma with the car wash and the storage yard in the background. This is another thing that we look forward to in the winter. Usually a second engine is added on to the Scoot during inclement weather or really cold days, which gives us a good opportunity to get afternoon shots in the sun. Heading east, this is the Medford team track with one of those two engine trains in the winter. This is the switch to Gershow Recycling just east of Medford, a big NYA customer. Yaphank Station from a highway overpass. This is a westbound train. If you notice, just kind of out of view there, just next to the engine on the right is the block limit signal YA for Yaphank. We'll go back into the time machine here to 1972 with a nice RS3. Looks a little different today. Back to 2020, working the track here. And now we're ready to head west. And there's one of those diesel trains with two engines, again at Yaphank. Just east of Yaphank, the Nicola Ready Mix siding, another NYA customer. Mile 67 east of Manorville. This is a westbound train. The former Calverton station is just out of view behind the train set. Nice Long Island scenery out here. Track inspection car TC82, built by Placer America, measures all aspects of the track, including gauge width, crossing elevation, and rail profile. This was taken in August 2020. That is the abandoned Calverton station. Good place to have a barbecue. Paraco Gas in Riverhead, another big New York and Atlantic customer, just west of the Riverhead station. Here's TC82 again, this time same place you saw last week's trip, passing the block limit LD for a Long Island Railroad Supervisor Larry Dixon and the Railroad Museum of Long Island in Riverhead. And same place, New York and Atlantic. Generally, this is as far east as they've been going. Paraco seems to be the easternmost customer. View on the platform next to the Railroad Museum of Long Island's semi-preserved M1 set. And some other equipment in the yard, which you guys saw last week if you were on the train. Further east, block limit R in Jamesport. This was a Long Island Railroad station until 1984. I'm standing on the platform here. Closer view of a block limit signal. And Greenport, the eastern end, connection to the Shelter Island Ferry. Nice town to walk around and have lunch and see the sights. There's the track inspection car, some fancy yacht in the background. View I always like to take with the station and some water. We're going to head back to Bethpage, and this time we're going to take a ride on the Central Branch, which not too many people photograph. Again, this is a non-electrified single track that connects the main line to the Babylon Branch. This is in geographical order, just east of B Tower, 29.9 mile signal, just north of the old South Farmingdale station, which closed in 1972, which is actually just off to my left here in this view. Again, this is one of these weekend closure trains, which has a dual mode on each end. Here's some NYA MP15s operating on the line for PTC testing. That's passing mile 31. Is the other side of mile 31. Little interesting scenery here with a storage building on the right. We had some fun in 2020. Again, most of this show is from 2020. Just to sort of brighten up the view, we threw in a Biden and Trump signs in a couple of places. We're not going to discuss politics, but we're just here to document the time in history. From the Broad Hollow overpass, same place, you can see mile 31 down there. If I'm not mistaken, this service is running this weekend and next weekend as well. So if you're interested, you could get out and get some pictures. That's under Broad Hollow again, late evening sun in the winter. Further east on the line, this is mile 33 at Wellwood Avenue. That's one of the connection trains and a MP15 on a siding here, just in case. And here we are a little further east at Albin Avenue in Babylon. That's a Long Island Railroad training facility just out of view. You can see the Long Island Railroad caboose. And on the platform at Babylon, if you came from the main line, you'd ride to here, jump on an M7 to go into Penn. I always find these kind of pictures interesting because you have a dual mode on the right and a DE on the left. And a view from the ground. On the Montauk, CPLs in West Islip, just east of Babylon, and a light engine move at Oakdale. And back into New York City. This is New York and Atlantic's, one of two New York and Atlantic Progress Rail PR 20B engines running under Woodhaven Boulevard on the Forest Hills Glendale border. This is the lower Montauk, which the New York and Atlantic uses to travel from Fresh Pond to Jamaica to access the main line heading east. That's RS 41 coming back in the afternoon. A little further east in that location is the 88th Street crossing with a pair of light GP38-2s. That's Woodhaven Boulevard in the background. And the other crossing by the old Maspeth station. Here, again, we see 300 at 73rd Street. Usually one of the two tracks has cars there in storage. Further east of Fresh Pond, still on the lower Montauk, here is a leased GP38-2 on a weekend RS-20 under the new Kosciuszko Bridge. This is where the former Long Island Railroad Haberman Station was, which closed in 1998. That's the Long Island Railroad's Navy lead on the left. This, again, is a New York and Atlantic freight. And the other New York and Atlantic line is down to Bay Ridge. This is by Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn, pair of leased engines heading toward Bay Ridge. This was kind of rare when I took it in 2020. This was sort of an everyday occurrence in daylight on Wednesdays over 2021, but that seems to be changing now. Here is NYA actually working all the way into the yard. And since we're down in the area, this is the New York, New Jersey Marine Rail float that goes from Bay Ridge to Greenville, New Jersey. That's the Marjorie McAllister tug, which was built in 1974 in Louisiana and is used to float the rail freight across. This was one of my highlight shots of 2021, which I threw in here, which shows New York and Atlantic MP15 AC 151 crossing on the New York, New Jersey car float, crossing upper New York Bay on Wednesday, June 23rd. This was being shipped out to Metro East Industries in East St. Louis, Illinois for rebuilding. And the float New York, New Jersey 100 is one of two 4-track car float barges built by Metal Trades in South Carolina and entered service in May 2019. That would be kind of cool to see floating by you as you're on a ferry. And just to close out the Long Island Railroad, fall is shot in Oyster Bay, October of 2020. When you get a rare engine on both ends train on the Oyster Bay branch, you can get the train passing the tower in Locust Valley. And here is one of those fall leaf trains at Malvern on the West Hempstead branch. Long Island Railroad now runs laser and wash trains to clean leaf residue off the tracks. I went into that a lot during the ERA show last year, but here's another shot on an electric only branch. And one last NYA shot. Here we are at Syosset on the Port Jefferson branch. This is one nice weekend morning. So that's part one. Give me 1 second here. I can't make these files too big or they crash. So now we'll head up to Connecticut. Another view of the famous election signs here in Wallingford, Connecticut. This is a Amtrak train coming down from Springfield to New Haven. Just taken 3 days ago, my first view of one of the CT Rail ex-New Jersey Transit Genesis engines, or P42s, that were rebuilt to use on either the Hartford line or the Shore line. Again, this was taken on Wednesday. So we'll take a look at a few different things. Take a look at a few Providence and Worcester trains. I threw in a couple of maps. It wasn't easy to find some things that kind of illustrate what we're looking at here, but we're going to take a look at the what you see in red there, sort of in the middle on the left, going from Cedar Hill up to Middletown, and then Middletown up to Hartford. I did a little of this in 2020. Despite the weather, this was actually kind of a decent foliage shot. And just lost my notes. This is the Middletown branch of the Providence and Worcester. This is the NH1 train in Reed Gap and Wallingford with some nice foliage, October 23rd, 2020. Heading up the line toward Middletown, we're passing the Middlefield station with a booming train of one car. The famous cemetery shot here in Middlefield. And now we're in Middletown on a different day. This is crossing the Connecticut River into Middletown on the left after working in Red Technologies in Portland on the right. This is a Sunday train in January of 2021. That's the Charles Aragoni Bridge in the background, which carries Route 66 between Middletown and Portland. And in this case, Providence and Worcester is operating over the former Boston and New York airline. After switching Red Technologies, the train went north. A couple of interesting shots north. We're unfortunately running Longford forward here, but that worked in the southbound direction later. We're passing the Cromwell station, formerly of the Connecticut Valley Railroad, later the New Haven. The line at this point was recently reactivated north of Rocky Hill and usually operated by G&W, Genesee and Wyoming's other railroad, the Connecticut Southern, which had been making round trips between Hartford and Middletown. In January of last year, this is one of the first trips the P&W ran since the line was reactivated. The station is currently a real estate office and a massage parlor. You can spend $500,000 on a house and have a massage after to feel better about it. Here is a highlight of the day, even though it didn't look too great. A caboose was added to the end of the train for a couple of photographers who were out this day. Further up the line, passing the Rocky Hill station and the Wethersfield station, built for the Connecticut Valley Railroad in 1871, also later New Haven. And after going up to Wethersfield and interchanging at Hartford, the train returned. Here we are headed south, past some flood control on the Hartford-Wethersfield border. Here we are again passing the station in Wethersfield. This was the shot of the day by far. Clouds started coming in here in Rocky Hill, but still pretty good. We just got to roll that Port Osan out of the way next time we're up there. Here we are passing the Cromwell station. and back into Middletown, working the yard there on the left, the main line tracks on the right. So that's take a little look at the Middletown cluster of P&W. Now we'll take a look at the Housatonic Railroad. If you see the map there in red, this is from the Housatonic website, you can see where they operate. But we're going to concentrate on the Sunday NX12 train, which runs from Canaan up to Pittsfield. This is a daily Sunday occurrence. Generally speaking, get there by 7 o'clock. This is the yard area just south of Canaan. The train will get underway. Generally speaking, it rolls up into Canaan. Here is the famous Canaan Station, which was built in 1872, Victorian style station. Actually was burned in a fire in October 2001 and was rebuilt in 2016. It's a nice little museum in there and a brewery, good place to visit. The track that the train is on is the main line headed up to Pittsfield. The track going to the right curves to Specialty Minerals, which usually is the first stop on any NX12 Sunday day. We'll go back to the history files here, and you can see a shot in Canaan when was this? 1979, June 1st, 1979, when it was still Penn Central. Housatonic was formed in 1983, running on mostly ex-New Haven track from the original Housatonic Railroad, which later became part of the New Haven. Here's a train headed up to Specialty Minerals. Always like to get some signs in the picture here, those famous signs, which were in a lot of pictures I took in October of last year. Here, Housatonic started with 5 of those nice painted, these nice painted orange and yellow and green GP35s. Over the years, there only seems to be 1 or 2 in service. They have a couple of leasers now, which you see here. Here's Specialty Minerals last October with a Housatonic GP35 and I wouldn't say recently, but maybe purchased 3 or 4 years ago, a Bangor and Aroostook GP9, which is still in BAR paint. Specialty Minerals with one of the leasers. And this is on the main line, ready to depart north. This is a combination of maybe 3 chases in 2020. One time, unfortunately, had light power, but I kind of like this blue and black GATX engine. So heading north from Canaan, here we are leaving town. This is Route 7 next to you, which is a great chase road. A couple of shots leaving town on different days. We've just crossed into Massachusetts. This is passing the famous Sheffield Pottery. I'm standing on Route 7. Here's Sheffield Pottery in the other direction. Continuing north, just north of Great Barrington. Great photo prop is this station built in 1850 in Housatonic, Massachusetts. Last passenger train here was in 1971. A couple excursions after that, last regular service passenger train, 1971. Housatonic Freight Station. A couple of different views, Housatonic, the light power. Here we are with the train. Headed further north, Stockbridge. The station in Stockbridge, built in 1893, English Gothic revival. Blue dolomite stone, in case you were interested. Today, the station is used as an art gallery. And again, daily passenger service ended April 30th, 1971. The Berkshire Scenic Railway Museum in Lenox ran trips here between 2003 and 2011, and they own the station today and lease it to the art gallery. Maybe one day we'll have passenger trains back. Continuing, actually same spot, GATX passing the station. Further up, Lee, Massachusetts. This station was built in 1893. I've never been able to get this picture in sun, even though I've tried like 3 times. But when I go back into the history file, here's a Berkshire Scenic train in 1982. And if I go back a little further, this shot was taken by Alan Roberts, and I did purchase this on eBay not too long ago. This is a 1970 New Haven train FL9 about to pass the station. Continuing further north, Lenox, Massachusetts. This is a station built in 1902, now home to the Berkshire Scenic Railway Museum. Berkshire Scenic has a nice little museum here with basically a very short stretch of track where they run a little back and forth thing on. Berkshire Scenic also has a very nice operation up in Massachusetts in North Adams. Actually, I believe they start in Adams now, where they actually operate like a half-an-hour train ride. So well worth a visit one day also. But here's the NX12 headed south in Lenox. A couple of views around the yard. Recently, a FL9 made it onto the property, owned by a private individual, WebRail, who apparently plans to run it at some point. So we're kind of looking forward to that when that day comes. Here is the NX12 returning south, passing a well-lit FL9. A couple of views of some museum equipment and the road train. And this was kind of an amazing shot in the end of the summer in 2020. From left to right, we have the WebRail FL9, Berkshire Scenic's Penn Central painted RS3 5599, Housatonics leased GP38 2643, Housatonics owned GP9 22, and a Housatonic leased GP38 2328. Who would think you would see so many engines basically moving? Three of these engines were moving in 2020. So eventually the Housatonic gets to Pittsfield, Massachusetts. It runs on the former Boston and Albany CSX now. Here's CSX Q425 eastbound at the famous Woodlawn Avenue overpass in Pittsfield. We were happy to see this, but I came for Housatonic. Unfortunately, no cars this way. Here is Q425 the other way. That's the former GE plant in Pittsfield. And here's Housatonic headed back west to go south. Here we are the one day that I was up there when BAR 22 was leading, headed west and south. Headed back to Canaan, passing the Pittsfield Transportation Center, also the Amtrak station and a intermodal bus transfer location. Here is the westbound Lakeshore Limited, headed towards Albany. And here's the BAR engine headed back, sort of last light, August of 2020. Take a quick look at the New England Central Railroad, sort of on the south end. If you see Willimantic on the map, we're going to go a little north of Willimantic and head north to Palmer. We'll be back on the New England Central later. New England Central is also owned by the Genesee and Wyoming, formed in 1995, former Central Vermont Railroad that CN owned. This is train 608, which makes weekday round trips from Willimantic to Palmer and back on New England Central's Palmer sub. Here's engine 3000 passing the old station in Coventry, Connecticut. I got a tip that this was going to be leading about a month ago. This is a 2021 shot. New England Central painted engine leading on New England Central is always great to see. Unfortunately, this engine was in a terrible accident and is now out of service about a month after I took this picture. I believe that only leaves one New England Central locomotive left here. Moving further up the line, this is the Eagleville Dam in Mansfield, Connecticut. This is September 17, 2020. This is the Eagleville Preserve and train 608, as we said. Always nice to get a train with a waterfall, even if the water isn't really pumping. Further up the line, the Willington Station, built in 1894. Originally, this area was called Tolland. Another station further up, Stafford Springs. This train was quite late this day. I've got to try to do this again next summer when it's a little earlier to get this in better light. And a nice shot here at St. Edward Cemetery in Stafford Springs. A good friend tipped me off on some locations on this line. Grateful for that info. Further north, Palmer, Massachusetts. This is where the New England Central interchanges with CSX and the Mass Central. Those railfan food connoisseurs know the steaming tender in Palmer. Note the ex-Lackawanna car there. They seem to be everywhere. While we're here, we'll take a look at the Mass Central. This is the PA2 Palmer to either Ware or South Barry and return. Runs on weekdays only. Line was originally built for as the Ware River Railroad and opened between Palmer and Gilbertville in 1870. The rest of the line to South Barry in 1873. Later becoming Boston and Albany's Ware River branch. A few pieces were part of the Central Massachusetts Railroad. Here the engines are headed east on CSX on the Boston and Albany to access the Palmer Yard. Here's a little map. It's not a great one either, but sort of in the middle, just to the left, you can see a black line running from Palmer up to South Barry. That's a business I should go into, making maps for railroads, because some of the ones on the websites are not that great. Here we have Light Power headed back to the yard in Palmer, passing an interesting pink building. Curving up onto the Mass Central, here we are basically passing the O.C. White factory in the Thorndike Village section of Palmer. Here we are crossing the pond at Forest Lake. Continuing further north, Holy Cross Polish National Catholic Church in the background as we enter Ware. Generally speaking, you can get either 2 engines or 1 engine on this train. I did this twice in 2020. Once I got 2, the other time I got 1. A few views around Ware. Some of those tracks off to the left are from the Central Massachusetts Railway. Leaving Ware, passing a New York Central flange post. There's quite a few of these on the line in different places. The old Gilbertville Station, which is now a restaurant and freight house. Heading north, leaving Gilbertville, crossing Route 32. And just a few feet north of this is a pizza place. This is a station on that Central Massachusetts Railroad, which later became the Boston and Maine Wheelwright branch. It's rated quite high for pizza, so you should give it a chance. I will next time I'm there too. Continuing further north, Old Furnace and Hardwick. Just over my shoulder here, on the return, passing what was either a passenger or freight station in Old Furnace. And the end of the line, Wildwood Reload, which is a transload facility in South Barry. It's possible that we may see some passenger trains on this line. They recently purchased some ex-New Jersey Transit Comet cars and a Metro bi-level, and they have some older locos that are getting worked on. So we may have to head back to Palmer and Barry soon. So we're gonna head a little further north. This is Vermont, All Earth Rail, which is a green company that is trying to market and rebrand or reuse RDCs as little passenger trains in the state of Vermont to get people out of their cars. Actually, if I go back here, if you look under the logo, you can see the Trinity Railway Express logo. And this one, you can actually still read Trinity Railway Express. All Earth Rail bought 12 RDCs from Dallas Area Rapid Transit TRE in 2017. Not much has happened with these. They've had 1 or 2 displays in Barry.
Hello.
But
How are
nothing,
you?
nothing
Do you get that
firm.
text by chance? Yeah. Oh, good, okay. Okay, no problem. Okay.
Hey, who's
Are you
that?
off the mute there, Steve?
But please mute.
Okay. So here's a couple views around the facility
Yeah.
in Vermont. Here's a couple of cars that they restored for demonstration.
Okay, so, all right.
Is 5 cars that are pretty much ready to go. Last time I was here, before this was 1994, when the MBTA was having red line cars built by Bombardier. 86 of these 1,800 cars were built for the red line, and I just saw a few of them on Wednesday in service. That section of Barry, Washingtonville, where the facility is, is switched by the Vermont Railway, actually the Vermont Rail Systems Washington County Railroads Granite Division. On this day, GP9U 804 was seen switching at Montpelier Junction, which is where the Vermont Railway connects to the New England Central. I came up a little bit early. This was actually a day trip from New York City. I left at like 1 o'clock in the morning, got up there, took pictures of the RDCs, and got in position to work on the New England Central coming south. Actually, it was a detour train for Vermont Railway over the New England Central. This was kind of a big thing over the summer in 2020. While bridges were being replaced in Middlebury, Vermont, the Vermont Railway had to close their line, and they detoured trains with the help of the state of Vermont, who paid for these lease engines, to run over the New England Central. Here's one of the detour trains passing the Amtrak station, Montpelier Junction. Headed south from here, the famous shot along the Mud Pond in Roxbury, Vermont. Generally speaking, New England Central operates this not in daylight hours. You can get pictures of Amtrak here, but it was nice to get some freight. Kind of a rare occurrence was getting a Vermont Railway engine on the train. They used this as an opportunity to move engines around between Burlington and Rutland during the outage. Headed south on the line, this is the Amtrak station at Randolph, Vermont. Here is the famous shot crossing the White River Bridge in West Hartford. Again, this is Vermont Rail Systems BDRD, that's Burlington to Rutland, running over the New England Central. Here we are passing the Amtrak station in White River Junction. In Claremont, New Hampshire, somewhat remanicured Amtrak station and parking lot. Here is the trestle in Charlestown, I think, actually. Here's the station in Charlestown, which is now a hardware store. And the Connecticut River crossing in Bellows Falls. Trains would operate from Burlington down to Bellows Falls. Here you can see a train crossing the Connecticut River, about to cross the Diamond, which the train is on the New England Central. The Diamond is for Vermont Rail. So the train will pull down to the Amtrak station, switch crews, pull further down past the Amtrak station, through the famous Mill Street Tunnel, and back up onto the Vermont Rail System trackage, where power got swapped with a different crew. The train headed east would now go north up to Burlington, and the train that we just photographed coming south would go west along the Green Mountain to get up to Rutland. It's very interesting to see. Part 2. And here's just a couple more shots in Bellows Falls. That is the train that's coming from Rutland, about to get to the Amtrak station. And here is the train that had just come down, which has a Vermont Railway System on the end here. But if you look at the front of the train out of view, there's 4 or 5 blue engines on there pulling the train back to Rutland. So interesting little operation. While we're in Vermont, we'll take a quick look at the actual Vermont system. If you see the little map there, Bellows Falls with the little line that heads up to Rutland, we'll take a look at that. The other interesting thing that happened in Vermont in 2020 was the Pan Am detour trains. This happened due to the partial collapse of the Hoosick Tunnel. So Pan Am sent trains basically across the Vermont Rail System up to Rutland and then back down the other side to join their line. Here is a shot on March 1st, basically just before the pandemic started, passing Chester, Vermont. And we chased a couple of trains here. Actually, this is one train headed towards Rutland, as I mentioned. This is the talc plant in Smithville. And here we are in East Wallingford. This is detour train 11R. Coming into Rutland here, note the double stacks on the train, which are not used for the same purpose here, but looks good in the picture. Now, when the train came into Rutland, they just cut the power off, ran around and pulled south. We had better looking stuff here with some painted Pan Am B40-8s. This is East Dorset on the way down towards Pan Am. Here we are in Manchester Center. And last flight at Arlington. This was interesting to see. I only got to make one trip up here, unfortunately. Fast forward to 2021 last month. Here is the Vermont Rail System train leading 13 private cars past the future Amtrak station in Ferrisburg, Virgins on Friday, October 1st. The cars are part of the 43rd annual convention of the American Association of Private Rail Car Owners, ARPACO, which toured the Vermont Rail System from September 26th to October 1st. The station will soon be served by Amtrak's Ethan Allen Express in early 22, when the train is extended north from the current terminal in Rutland to Burlington, with stops Middlebury and here. The Amtrak signs are already up. Here is the Middlebury Tunnel. This is what we talked about a couple of subjects back, why the New England Central Detour train occurred. There were some bridges in town that needed to be replaced, and they built this tunnel through here. I just, hold on one second. This was a major project, and this cost quite a few bucks. I can't see my notes here, so we'll skip that. That's the Middlebury Post Office up top. Headed further south, that's the New Haven, Vermont station. One of the requirements by Amtrak to operate this service is they have to move that station or knock it down, because Amtrak says it's too close to their trains. Here is a passenger train passing the station, which has been happening for many years. And Amtrak trains are currently testing here now. I just saw a picture of Amtrak trains passing this last Sunday. But that station is supposed to move somewhere into town. Here we are, the ARPACO train made a stop at the Proctor Marble Museum, and those are passengers from the train taking photos of it during a run-by. Once the train got to Rutland, or Center Rutland actually, the Vermont engines cut off and the Amtrak engines were put on the train to bring it back to Albany Rensselaer. There's one of the 50th anniversary engines, what they call the Midnight Blue, leading the train west to hook into CP to head south down to Albany Rensselaer. There's a good view of quite a few cars on the train. Here's another shot. Always nice to see some private varnish. Back to 2020, here's another detour train. We've crossed into New York. This is Fort Edward, and this is a detour train that operated along CP to avoid the Hoosick Tunnel collapse. 5 GP38-2s crossing the Hudson River in Fort Edward. This train will switch on at Whitehall to the Vermont Rail System to make that trek across that we showed you with the other train. Since we're in New York, we'll take a look at a few other things. Very interesting from the last couple of weeks. This is the Canadian Pacific office car special, the Royal Canadian Pacific train, which was called 40B this day. A relatively new SD70 ACU pulling the beautiful F units, F9A 1401 and F9B 1900. This is along the former D&H in Clemens, New York, Sunday, September 26th. This was a deadhead from Calgary to Saratoga to operate a northbound charter train to Plattsburgh later that week. And I was disappointed this day not to have the F units leading, but don't you know, a couple days later, they did maneuver the train around. This was sitting at the Saratoga Springs Amtrak station at about 5 o'clock in the morning on a Friday. This was Friday, October 1st. Was able to get a few shots here, Saratoga. This was lit with my million candle power flashlight, which I always keep in the car. But we were able to get a few shots of the train, and that was always good to see. Now we'll switch over to the Battenkill, which was on my list also. Battenkill was formed in 1982 to operate 30 miles of XD&H trackage from Salem to Eagle Bridge. You can see on this map here toward the bottom right, Eagle Bridge, and the line headed up to Salem. Let's see, 30 miles of XD&H trackage from Salem to Eagle Bridge. This was the D&H Washington County branch. This is RS 34116, originally D&H at Greenwich Junction in Salem. Nice classic Alcos that make all the right noises. This is from May 2020. I did splice a couple of different trips up here together, so I'll show them in geographical order from Salem down to Eagle Bridge. This is a leased Southern New England Railroad Alco RS-36 in D&H colors, which has been used on the Battenkill for about a year and a half or so. If you see peeking out in the back there, former Iowa Pacific E8s, 808 and 807 in DL&W livery. They were on the Saratoga North Creek for a while, never ran. You might have seen them at the fairgrounds in Syracuse where they sat for years. But anyway, here's the Battenkill running south with this beautiful leased engine. Again, makes all the right noises. Nice and scenic up there. This is Rexley, nice Alco sneaking out from the foliage. Just over my left shoulder is the Rexley covered bridge from 1874. Further down the line, this is Shushan, and these are former Saratoga North Creek BL2s, which sat here for quite a while. They were recently sold to the Hoosier Valley Museum in North Judson, Indiana. One of them is pretty close to operation from what I read, but they did sat here in Shushan for a while, the other direction. And here's the freight headed south passing Shushan, Route 61 crossing. Headed south from here, you can parallel Route 64, get some nice pictures. There's a second one of these engines that just recently made it up to Salem. It's being repainted in a very interesting D&H color that I haven't seen on too many trains, but did exist. So that'll be nice to see running. This is Fish Hatchery Road in Cambridge. These were taken May 26, 2020. Another view. Locomotive was built in 1962 for the Atlantic in Danville before working its way to Norfolk, Franklin, and Danville, and later the Delaware coastline. Here we are at the Cambridge station. This is the former D&H station. Classic station was built in 1909, used by the Battenkill Railroad passenger trains that ran many years ago, and is today used by the Argyle Brewing Company as a tasting and tap room. Note the flag at half-staff for the coronavirus pandemic. Again, this is May 2020. That tree that was there that blocked the station is now gone. This is what it looks like today. This was another interesting event that was held last month, or actually October 1st and 2nd, in conjunction with the Battenkill Railroad, Northeast New York Railroad Preservation, which is the owner of the Battenkill, and Raven Rail, which is the owner of this Alco S2 and the caboose in the background. A special Rail and Ales event was held here, followed by a night photo session, which we'll look at now. I have to give credit to the guy who worked the flashes, a local rail fan from Troy named William Gill. This was a nice little scene here. Alco's making some nice smoke. Could everybody please put their mute on because I have some feedback going on? Thank you. Nice event here. This was a Friday night event, and Saturday we were at Eagle Bridge, which you'll see later. But here's a few pictures around Cambridge, some shots with the 1909 station and the Raven Rail caboose, and with the old steel plow building. That's the owner of the engine and the coach, Hal Raven, waving the lantern. Nothing like an Alco smoking at night. Headed south along the line, this is Owl Kill Road in Cambridge. And here's a wide shot at Owl Kill. After the Friday night session, Saturday morning, the engine and caboose headed south to the delight of 15 rail fans who chased. Battenkill is difficult to shoot. It generally runs once or twice a week, and it's quite random. So the fact that you kind of knew when something was running this day was wonderful, even though the weather wasn't perfect. Headed south, a nice shot. Everybody loves a red barn. This is the classic shot headed into Eagle Bridge, crossing the Hoosick River. That barn on the left has been photographed many times. Here was the picture from October 2nd with the Alco stopped on the bridge. Here we are at Eagle Bridge. That's what the station, which is a former B&M station, looked like in 2020. And basically the concept of why all the rail fans were out there the first week in October was to do some cleanup work around the station. And that's what it looked like when we were finished with the work. So here's another night photo session on Saturday at Eagle Bridge with the Raven Rail S2. This station was built in 1891. Just to put this in perspective, this was a totally different event from anything that I've ever been part of in the railfan community. These are all railfans who volunteered their time to work. A railfan from Albany trucked that machinery up here to use. The other dump truck in the back, which is actually has a thing on the end for wood chipper work. A local railfan brought that here as well. And basically, 30-ish people spent all day here cleaning this and working on it. Here's the station getting painted toward the end of the day. And here was the final night shot, which kind of, made the whole day. The red in the background is from the signals on Pan Am, makes it look like there's some really nice foliage. But anyway, anytime you see an Alco smoking and you can actually see the station now is quite an accomplishment. So headed further south, we're now on Staten Island, leased Morristown and Erie MP15 for New York Container Terminal. This is Arlington Yard on Staten Island. This line switches both Arlington Yard and the Howland Hook Marine Terminal. They have a couple of different engines, but this seems to be running every time I come out here. While on Staten Island, these are ex-Erie Lackawanna SD45-2s on Conrail Shared Assets BY1 train, photographed at the Sawmill March at River Road in Staten Island, October 15, 2020. This just departed the Staten Island transfer station on the site of the Fresh Hills landfill and will use the Travis branch to access the Arthur Kill Bridge. Interesting to see. That is the Arthur Kill Bridge. Here we see a train coming from Staten Island into Elizabeth, New Jersey. This is BY1 also. Here's a wide view of the train coming off the bridge. Always nice to see ex-Erie Lackawanna engines in use. Here is a Norfolk Southern PN8 at CP Ralph and Elizabeth. That's coming off the line and heading, switching and diverging onto the lead to the B&O, former B&O Arthur Kill Bridge to go to Staten Island. This was a hot rail fan event for 2019 and 2020, heading down to photograph the Erie Lackawanna NS engine in service. Excuse me. Here we are crossing the Diamond at CP Run and Port Reading. Shots of this engine were fairly easy to get for the last few years, but the implementation of PTC has sort of relegated this to non-leading duties and yard duties. So this is definitely not hard to get, definitely not easy to get anymore. But here's a few shots in early 2020. Here's the other view at CP Run, looking at a train coming out of Port Reading Yard. Here's New Jersey Transit's Erie Lackawanna ALP 45 DP in Woodbine Yard in Spring Valley. This took a little work to get. The beginning of 2020, this was not running for quite a bit of the time when New Jersey Transit wasn't running a lot of service. The other couple of heritage engines, I showed you this one before, the ALP 45, I'm sorry, the ALP 46 on the Pennsy here at Linden Station on a train headed to Penn Station. NJT wrapped 3 engines or wrapped 2 and painted 1 for their 40th anniversary in 2019. And it's still nice to see them running today when you do see them. The third and final one is the CNJ GP40PH-2. This is Ho-Hocus with a nice signal bridge and a fake tree slash signal tower. But this is a great place for evening light. Headed north on NJT, the Erie Railroad's former WC Tower in Waldwick. That's NS GB38-2 coming down from Suffern. Headed further up, this was another thing that everybody did in 2020. The H88 freight, which went from Suffern north generally to Campbell Hall over Metro North Port Jervis line. This was a pretty solid every Saturday for much of the beginning of 2020. Here we are passing the Metro North station at Sloatsburg. Back to the history files. Metro North RDCs at Tuxedo, July 1st, 1985. This was something my father and I used to do a lot to get the RDCs while they were running up here. Further up the line, the former Erie station in Arden, New York, which was a post office into the early 2000s. That's H88 coming back. When I last inquired about this train, it pretty much ran at night. So this is not easy to do anymore. I'm glad I did it in the beginning of 2020. Famous Moodna Viaduct, everybody knows this. Nice northbound Metro North train, great place to take pictures. There's the freight H88 coming back in the afternoon. This took me like 2 attempts to get it in perfect sun, but I was fortunate this day. And here's the train at Campbell Hall after picking up its cars to bring south. Not too far from the area, maybe an hour west, Sturbridge line in Honesdale. In 2020, they started working on that FL9 on the left, which came from the Railroad Museum of New England in Connecticut. The FP7 9880 is originally from Canadian Pacific and the AMT in Montreal. And you see in the background there, one of the other BL2s in use. Generally, the train today has 9880 on the south end and the BL2 on the north end. And I understand that 2002, the FL9 is being rebuilt for a private individual. Hopefully we can see that running one day soon. The other thing that they cleaned up there is this Erie-Lackawanna F unit. It was originally Bessemer and Lake Erie. I did hear it was on the train once, but it doesn't seem to run too often. I would love to see this moving one day on that tourist train. Now we'll take a quick look at the Reading and Northern. This is an amazing railroad success story. Obviously founded as the Blue Mountain in Reading in 1983. It now operates over 300 miles of track. We're going to take a look at the main line from the outer station in Reading. I came down here in early 2020 after we were all shocked to hear that Norfolk Southern sold their F units. We were happy to see at least Reading and Northern got an FA, an F7 and an FB, excuse me, an F9 and an FB. Reading and Northern repainted it and put it on display for a couple of weeks. So every rail fan in the Northeast and the Middle Atlantic came here to photograph it sitting in the outer station. This is with my trusty flashlight again. And nice to see. And now we can actually see it running. They're running some trips this fall. Again, this is the outer station before a train trip, a couple of different views. The railroad and the owner certainly like to show off beautiful railroad structures, signs, and stations. They've done a wonderful job building different structures in different places throughout their network. And you never know what you're going to see when you go to different places to photograph. For those bus fans there, it's a combo shot. This was, I believe, the first run of the train. Here we are leaving, or about ready to leave North Reading Junction. You could see the RDCs off on the side. Went back later in 2020. This was maybe 3 or 4 different trips out there. This was a 3-car RDC train leaving North Reading. Almost all trains from here end up going to Jim Thorpe. It's a wonderfully scenic ride and a great thing to chase if you're a fan. But here's a couple of pictures around Reading Outer Station. We will head out of Reading Outer Station north. We hit Mooresville. This was one of those days that was supposed to be completely sunny, and then you get here 3 hours away and it's cloudy. But you know, you have to shoot the F unit while you're there. I went back the week after, or maybe 2 weeks after. Foliage had improved, and here is the 3-car RDC train doing the same thing. That 9167 was the most recently acquired RDC, which they got from the Southern Railroad of New Jersey, which had come from New York Susquehanna and Western for that Syracuse service, and originally from New Haven as RDC 43. Further up the line is the corporate office in Port Clinton. Friendly place for rail fans. You could still walk around and take pictures. XUP SD40-2s on the famous NRFF train, North Reading Fast Freight, which is a blessing for freight fans as it leaves on a schedule every day. And you know that 1:55 or 2:10, whatever the time is, I don't remember, it's going to leave North Reading and you can catch it on the line every day. There seems to be sometimes now where it doesn't operate on Saturday, but it does operate every other day. So here's a few shots in Port Clinton. Here we have, if you like combo shots, Port Clinton is wonderful. Here's the SD40-2 passing the RDC. If you don't like that, we have recently acquired NS GP38-2 sitting in the yard. Here's the corporate office. Here's another shot of a SD40 with an RDC. This is what I was going for here, the combo with the F units. Here's the F unit train again. This was an office car special. Some other stuff sitting around the yard, a GP39 RN ex Santa Fe. That was painted red to be in the executive fleet before it was bumped out by the F units. You never know what you're going to find in the yard. XCSX SD50 on the right, an SW8, and that GP39 RN. Leaving the yard, there's a nice little office sign here that's a good photo prop. Headed north, the shot at Molino. You can see all three RDCs rolling. Before the pandemic, these trains were full every time. Hopefully they're on the way back. Here is an F unit train headed from Reading to Jim Thorpe, again at Molino. This was an amazingly long train. If you notice, the SD50 in there has that red color that only lasted for a few months, and it has currently been repainted into a livery similar to the F units in front. So I was happy to get this. Always nice to see a train that has an RDC in the middle of the train. That's always interesting. And we'll head to the last section here. Headed further north, New Rheingold, NRFF at New Rheingold. Zahners, this is a good place where northbound trains curve east in the morning, so you can get some good pictures. If you don't like the F unit, there's the RDC. In Tamaqua, some nice signals just south of town. Little foliage 2 years ago in Tamaqua. You can see the station basically in the background. Here we are on the platform. Reading and Northern has built a new platform here, which they are using for various trains and events. There's the tower in the background. Here's the F units passing the station, which is now a restaurant. Mile 99S is just north of Tamaqua. That's the famous NRFF. Just east geographically of Tamaqua, but a little convoluted way for the railroad to get there. We're in Nesquehoning. This is basically a train passing the Amatec plant, which is a siding. It's used by the railroad sometimes. Here's the NRFF train passing an OCS, and the guy waving on the back seat is Andy Muller, the owner of the Reading and Northern, who always waves to basically everyone he sees. I've been waved at many times. Seems like a nice guy. Nesquehoning in town, getting closer to Jim Thorpe. A couple of different trips with the F units, the RDC. This is the other interesting news of 2020, which obviously is outdated today. But the Reading and Northern bridge across the Lehigh River from the Glen Ononco access area in Lehigh Gorge State Park. This basically connects Reading, the RNN's Reading and Lehigh divisions, giving the NRFF train a clear shot to run from Reading straight through to Pittston Yard without having to do any reverse moves or run the engines around in Jim Thorpe. So this definitely gives RNN a faster freight between Reading and Scranton. So here's a shot shortly after the bridge opened. It's a couple of pictures from the fall of 2020, the F unit train with some foliage. Steam for those steam fans. This is the Lehigh Gorge trips that run out of Jim Thorpe up into the gorge. North of that area is CP Cole. Caboose had just been restored at this point. About a 40-minute or so walk up into the gorge. Nice shot here with the Black Bear sign. Coming through the gorge and out on the other side, Penobscot Tower. This is the NRFF freight in 2020. This is Penobscot's in Mountaintop, Pennsylvania. This is one of the first trips with the F units. This was like a July 4th weekend. The owner took it all over the system and did all kinds of cool stuff with it. That's the Mountaintop Historical Society waving their banner at the train, and the train's going under a CNJ signal bridge, which is always nice to see. Lots of photo props on the Reading and Northern. There's the back of the train with Andy Muller pointing at the people that had the sign out. This nice SW8 was sitting there asking to have its photo taken. Almost in Pittston, the other end of the NRFF, this is the Reading and Northern OCS train on that July 4th weekend in Durea. And just to head back down to cover all the area that I covered in 2020, we're back in the gorge, not too far from CP River that you saw before. Some end of November foliage shots here. Talk about just getting this picture in the sun before it got cloudy. Here we are, CP Cole, crossing the river with the F units. You saw that shot before. Here's a couple of pictures showing the steam train coming out of Jim Thorpe and crossing the river. And there's one of the diesel trains. On certain days, you have 3 or 4 trains running out of Jim Thorpe at any given time. So it's quite amazing. This shot to me looks like a model railroad. But anyway, following the train into Jim Thorpe, this is what the Reading Northern calls Nesquehoning Junction, an old CNJ tower. There's the sign for Nesquehoning Junction. And that train will coast south. Well, actually had just left Jim Thorpe. Here we are coasting into Jim Thorpe. RDCs. And here we are at the old CNJ station in Jim Thorpe. 5018 was that engine that was painted in this red color and has been repainted to match the F units now. I don't know if it's true, but the railfan rumor was Reading and Northern management thought that it looked too much like an RJ Corman engine, so they wanted to get a little more black on it to have it look different. But here it is, getting covered in soot while on display. I thought it was kind of nice. And here's the F units that July 4th weekend sitting at the old CNJ station. Super shiny. I like that one. Model railroad again. 3-car RDC train. My friend John Krattinger with the Jets shirt there. Here we are, last subject, the Delaware-Lackawanna. A subsidiary of Genesee Valley Transportation, started in 1993, runs 88 miles of trackage between Scranton and the Poconos, and some other branches to various places around Scranton. We'll take a look at the line from Scranton down to the Poconos. In 2020, the hot news on the DL was the opening of the Von Storch locomotive shops in Scranton. This is a Lehigh Valley, original Lehigh Valley, but still in Lehigh Valley paint, C420, sitting in front of the shops. There is a pedestrian overpass that you can take some pictures looking down at the building and whatever happens to be sitting outside. When taking pictures of the Delaware-Lackawanna, everybody says go to Bridge 60, which is basically the tower outside of Steamtown. And you can probably ask the crew, or there'll be some rail fan that will tell you what's going to happen. So this is Bridge 60. There's the power. This again is a combination of 3 or 4 trips that I took out here to basically chase from Scranton down to the Poconos. That is an M420 from BC Rail in the corporate Genesee Valley colors. That's the famous shot leaving Scranton with the hotel in the background, the former Lackawanna station in Scranton. Now I think it's a Radisson. That's a C-636 ex-Canadian Pacific leading the train down. Again, this is a combination of a couple of trips. Here's light power one day leaving Scranton. Here's looking in the other direction, M630 3000, passing the Lackawanna station / Today Hotel. And here is somewhat recent acquisition by the DL, maybe like 5 years ago. They got this M630 also. This was a GE demo and it had run on BC Rail before that. Again, headed in the geographical direction south. Here we are south of Scranton. This is just little foliage in September of 2 years ago. The famous Naog Tunnel and a train exiting headed towards Scranton. This is a morning shot at the Elmhurst Reservoir. Little bit of a walk in here, but certainly worth it on a beautiful day. And the Alcos provided the necessary smoke for the picture. Further south, Larson Lake, just north of Goldsboro. And the famous shot on the line, Snag Pond, pretty much in Goldsboro, with some foliage changing here. Army siding just north of Tobyhanna. Some foliage at the Tobyhanna station. Further south, Pocono Summit. That station needs a little bit of work. Hopefully that'll happen one day. There's the side shot with the station. There's the zoom shot illustrating what the summit means. Pretty big hill here. Engines make all the right noise. Decent foliage picture for 2020. Fairview Avenue in Mount Pocono. And the destination of this day's train, Cresco. The train was dropping off lumber cars here and picking up empties to go back. But a couple of pictures, again, a couple of different trips, some decent foliage. Leaving, little backlit, but with the foliage kind of works there. After the day was finished, the train went back north to Scranton, went to Taylor Yard, which is where we are here. You see some shifting around Taylor Yard with an NS C44-9W in the picture. This is where the line interchanges with an S. And just to throw this out there, anyone who's on the show, feel free to join. I'm doing the Electric Railroaders Association show November 19th. It's free for anyone to join. This was like a two-parter, like I mentioned from last year. So, you know, if you are interested, we're happy to have you. And just a little preview of what I'm going to show at the Electric Railroaders Association. Charlotte opened their Gold Line extension in August. So I took a little trip down there, 2 days of complete sun. So we're going to show that. Some news around New York City, obviously the Heroes Parade from July. We had one of our old elevated cars on the ticker tape parade on Broadway. One of the things everybody in New York City does in the summer, take pictures of the Providence and Worcester freight that you can really only get during the longest days of the year. I tried for 3 years to get this picture. I finally got it in sun with a subway and the P&W underneath. Both trains were moving. So this worked out pretty well. I'm also going to show some pictures of the Purple Line being constructed in Washington, D.C. I went down there this August. Ironically, those Kawasaki subway cars are all out of service in DC. There was a problem, and they're running like half-hour headways on every route in rush hour. So that's a disaster. Hopefully that gets fixed quickly. We're going to take a look at some of the Amtrak 50th anniversary engines. You saw the Midnight Blue in the show today. Got this one a couple of times too. Here we are in Worcester. I'm sorry, in Springfield on the Lakeshore Limited. Just came back from Boston. This was taken 2 days ago in Mattapan. The car on the left is the first rebuilt PCC for the Mattapan-Ashmont line, using a kit from Brookville and finished off at the Everett shops in Boston. Spent some time looking at the current system, a few night shots from Tuesday night on Mattapan. Always nice to see PCCs. Went to see the new Orange Line subway cars. They're finally back in service. They were out for 6 or 7 months. Get your shots of these now. You know, Red Line is supposed to get new cars after the Orange Line. There's a couple of demo cars in now, or test cars. I photographed them in the yard last year, but I haven't seen them running. But these cars sure do look nice with some good light. And the Green Line extension, ironically, 3 days ago, a memo just came out from the MBTA. The one shorter branch was supposed to open in December of 22. It now has been pushed back to May of 2023. This is the Leechmere station. This is what it looked like on Wednesday morning. You can see the track is in, they're working on the wires. This is what it looked like when I was there in May of 2020. They were just basically finishing the structure to start working on the platforms. And the old Leechmere station was a branch off across the intersection that you see in the background. This is taken from the Museum of Science parking lot, which is a great place to take pictures of the cars running out to Leechmere and beyond in 2023. Happened to see this thing sitting outside of Boston Engine Terminal. That was nice. Nice to see a Guilford engine. This was actually painted in Guilford colors during the Pan Am years when the talks of sale were coming up last year. I'm going to show some other highlights too, some freight stuff that I took this year. Lehigh Railway, which is not too far from Scranton, sort of northwest from Sayre down. And I took a nice trip, my first real trip in quite a while, out to the west, the Midwest, I should say. We're going to look at Chicago. You have the IRM here, work our way up through Wisconsin, and we're going to head eventually up to the Iron Range near Duluth. My first trip up there, you know, where can you still see Bessemer tunnel motors with some very nice scenery. Again, this was September this year. You'll see that in the January ERA show if you want to look. Couple last shots before we go. I'll end with the Hellgate. This is the new Acela. I think they call it the Avila. Ran a couple of times to do some testing in Boston. Here's one of the trips over Hellgate. Here's my favorite shot of the year, probably the Providence and Worcester's FPCH coming across the Hellgate Bridge with a matched pair of painted power taken from a parking garage in Manhattan. And another interesting thing, not too far off in the distant future, Long Island Railroad into Grand Central. Here's an East Side access shot taken a couple of months ago. This is quite far along. Hopefully we'll see this soon. Just want to say thank you to a couple of people who helped with information for this show and arranging and pointing out different things and scheduling and all kinds of good stuff. So thanks there. And I will end the show with a commuting picture from work on a New York City ferry at about 6:30 in the morning a month ago. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.
Oh, very nice.
Thank you. That
Thank
was
you.
outstanding, Andy.
Oh, beautiful pictures.
Wonderful show, wonderful pictures, very
Great
high
narrative.
resolution.
Thank you.
Glad to see you made the best of the pandemic year.
Absolutely.
It was
Absolutely.
outstanding.
Anybody have any questions?
Hey, well, it was hard to.
Nice image of West Barn there, Andy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice as usual.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, tremendous.
Well, I was struck by the detail in the pictures. You could actually read all the tiny little signs. You could read everything
That was amazing.
and look at the detail on the engines and everything.
If it didn't come out right, I wouldn't show it. So we picked the best of the best.
Yes,
That it was.
that it was, yes.
Well, you must have a very good camera. What kind of camera do you use?
I have a Canon, a nice new EOS. I still take some film too, so I kind of rotate between both. But I have a 5D Mark IV and a Nikon FM2.
Mhm.
Are those automatic cameras or are they manual?
The film is manual, and I use the digital manual also. I don't do anything digital automatic.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Well, the results are there, that's for sure.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Andrew. I'll definitely be on for the program next month,
Oh,
Sounds
definitely.
good.
the ERA program.
I can send you a link too, which I should have did for today's show, but I could send you a link if you want to send it to your mailing list or something.
Oh, that would be great.
Oh, that would be
That's
very
awesome.
good. Yeah.
I would
Okay.
look
That's
forward to
great.
it.
Well,
Read
I
the
did,
third Friday of November.
Sounds good.
I also will be on the show in November too. This was an excellent show, and I'm sure
Oh,
that
yeah.
the one in November will be equally good. Really a lot to look forward to.
Yes.
Thanks so much for
Thanks very
for
much.
such an excellent presentation.
No problem. Thank you.
we enjoyed it
Our
very much.
appetites will be whetted for it.
Sounds good. Sounds
Okay,
good.
I'll stop.
Good
the
to see so
recording.
many of my friends and my godson on here too. That's cool.
Mm.
Ah, excellent. It definitely bolstered the bottom line for our attendance, I noticed.
Sure, we've never had over 30. Yeah, but
Yeah.
as high as 32.
Oh, we had at least 33 tonight.
Well, actually, I was on there on 2 devices I was using. On my
Oh,
smartphone, which is
that
monitor
doesn't
the participants.
Yeah.
That doesn't count.
That doesn't count, right? So you subtract 1 from 33.
That was just for communication purposes.
Right, yeah, for communication.
Or you were following the ACS game between Boston and
Right.
Houston.
I could care less about the ACS game with Boston and Houston.
Also,
I'll bet.
subtract down if
They could
anyone
vote.
was unmuted making noise.
If they could both lose, I'd be happy.
Yeah, right,
Oh.
right.
Are you
sure about that? I saw the name Steve Carlson in one of the squares. He's gone now. Is that the Steve Carlson that was the author from Saugus?
Mm.
Does
No.
anybody know him?
That, I don't know.
No,
I've
that's
never seen, well,
that's my
before.
good friend from Massachusetts. He's a
Oh.
P&W engineer. He's not an author
Oh.
from August.
Okay, and I saw Jake Foley. I know Jake Foley from the Mad Pat Ashmont line now.
Wow.
Jake Foley. He works for the T.
It's a small world.
Yes.
You see that? It attracted a very viewership far and wide.
Cannonball Foley.
Yeah.
Different Foley, Herb.
Oh.
Oh, boy. Someone I know just left the T, they went to Spirit Airlines.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
he used to
quite
live in New Jersey.
Well, it's a demodal.
Yeah,
Went from transit to aviation. It's another
Great show,
form.
Andrew. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.
That was great. Thank you.
thank you.
See you next month.
Okay, see you next month. I'll end it.